respect to the first child, which is placed on the top left corner. So if I recollect, we have different types of views and we have different types of layouts. If you look at layouts, we have linear layout, we have table layout, we have frame layout, and then we have absolute layout, we have relative layout, and there are many other types of layouts these days, like your merge layout and several others. We can actually see them, as we use. But these are the most common layouts that we typically use. Let's get into a small sample and try to see how we can work with all these different layouts here. So let me go to the same project that we did day before yesterday. So I have let me also click run as an Android application so that the emulator gets started. So but in the meanwhile, let's go to source. So we have the source here, that's main activity.java, and we have the activity layout. The activity layout is available in resources, layout, activity main.xml. And where are we setting activity main.xml to main activity? In the onCreate function, you can see that we are actually calling set content view with r.layout.activity underscore main. So the layout is assigned to this activity in your onCreate function. Let's go to this activity main and we can try some examples here. But before we do that, let's go to developer.android.com. We can click on develop and let's go to reference and let's see android.view package. If you look at android.view package, of course, there are several interfaces. And let's look at the class view. So view is the class which we discussed just a couple of minutes back, that this class represents the basic building block for all the user interface components. Okay, so if you want to create a view, your own custom view, you can create a class and extend it from the base class view. On the other hand, there are a lot of predefined views that are already available. So like text view, texture view, surface view, space, progress bar, media root button, keyboard view, spinner, seek bar, list view, and there are about 55 others that are actually available, which are all the basic views that are already available in Android. If you look at any of these views that are by default available in Android, they are all available in Android.widget package. They are all available in Android.widget package. And if you click on these classes like text view, then you have a number of other indirect subclasses like checkbox, compound button, and all of them.
Hitesh?
Yeah.
Yeah, like what is the main difference between the activity and view? Like activity also
Okay.
kind of a screen only, right?
No, yeah, here activity is like one screen of the application. Okay, so let me put it in what you call your .NET terms. So activity is like your ASPX page, okay? And all these views are like your text view, the table text, the calendar button, and all of those small items that you put on your ASPX page.
Okay,
Okay,
got it.
so activity is like your ASPX page, and all these different elements that you see here are the different views that we place on the ASPX page. So we don't typically
Okay.
put everything directly on the ASPX page. What we do is we put all these things, we arrange all the different views, uh, you know, in the layout file, that is in the XML file, and for the activity we will set that layout. Okay, so now you have, let's go to activity main.xml and let's try to do some stuff here. So I'm using linear layout and I'm using text view. I'm using say three text views. So that's the reason I think we saw in the last class, when you open this application you have three different text views. You want to create a button. It's as simple as you can always do button. And for every view, the Android layout width and layout height parameters are mandatory, because those parameters will actually define what is the width of the uh, view. You can add a button. Say you want to add an image, you can add an image. You want to create a radio button, you can create a radio button. Let's see, for example, just one class like your text view class. If you see text view class in Android, we have all the different XML attributes that are listed here with the description of each of these XML attributes. So depending on what we want to actually use, we can actually use something here. So if you want to actually capitalize all the text view, you can use that. If you want to specify that the text view is only for digits, you can actually use that. There are different parameters available for different uh, use cases or different properties that you want to actually set. You may also want to change the font, the text size, the style, the text color, and all of the stuff here by directly modifying. The other stuff is, you can also go for edit text. You can give some hint to this guy and say enter text here. If you want to create a radio button, you can also do that. But if you know the properties of radio button, a radio button is like it's mutually exclusive. So you need to put all the different radio buttons which are used together inside a radio group. Okay, so let's first see what radio group is. So radio group is a simple class. So let's go back here and say radio group, and I will put Android layout width and height. And within the radio group tag, let me put radio button, Android colon text, option 1, radio button, option 2, and stuff like that. So let's basically see how this looks like. So let's right click, run as Android application. So you have different stuff here. So these are the three text views. This is the button, this is the edit text, and you have two radio buttons here, right? So now this, I placed everything in a linear layout. Okay, so the linear layout with version with orientation as vertical. If I change this to horizontal, let's right click, run as Android application. You will see that the views are arranged horizontally. So hello world is fine. This is hard coded is the other one. The hello class, how are you is the other one. And all the other views went to the right side, out of screen. And this is still not scrollable because we did not place any scroll view, right? So say you can actually move this to vertical, and now what we can actually do is the inside radio group, you can put these two radio buttons in linear layout horizontal. So you can say linear layout and cut this here, paste it, and you can say Android layout where. Okay, so what I'm actually trying to do is I'm trying to put the radio buttons inside. Okay, I think what we can do is we can put this outside, and let me put one more, say, button and say. Now if you look at this application, the layout is slightly changed.
Hitesh, can we see them in can can we see them in the design time? In the
Yes, we can see them on design time. You can always
okay.
go back to switch to the graphical layout tab within the layout,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see them on the
Okay.
design. Okay,
Design time, right? Okay.
but I prefer always to go to emulator, and sometimes somehow I'm not so comfortable with the design stuff here. Okay,
Okay.
but if you see here, right, at a high level, what we have done is at the top level we have a linear layout. To the linear layout vertical, we have three different, or rather I would say three text boxes, one button, one edit text. Then we have linear layout horizontal, and inside linear layout horizontal, you have the radio group and the other button. In the same way, if you want to actually say, okay, let me move this toggle button from here to here, you can actually move it. If you want to have a checkbox, you can directly have it here. Okay, and then you can move a linear layout horizontal here, and inside the linear layout horizontal, you can actually put, let's say, a rating bar, and then you can put a small OK button, whatever it is. Now you can go back to your activity mail, and you can see that all these stuff was created. So you have all the different what do you call tags that are already created in your XML file. But you may want to add some additional properties. Say for the rating bar, you can also set, say, the max rating. So if you say the max rating is actually 5, and you can say Android colon rating, you can give the rating which is by default that should be visible to the rating bar, or whatever you want to give, you can give here. You can right click, run as application, and see how it looks. Okay, so we just changed some properties and it's available, right? So let's try to see how we can refer these buttons, these text views, these edit text, etc., that we are, uh, entering, that we are creating in the layout to in the Java file, so that we can actually do some programming part here. Okay, so let's do something. So we have the first text view. Let's create a unique ID for this text view. So to create a unique ID for this text view, all we need to do is go ahead and give a parameter Android colon ID is equal to at the rate, as we discussed in the last class, at the rate refers to resources. Add an ID parameter, so plus ID, by we can say text view 1 or whatever you want to actually give. In the same way, let us give a ID for the button. So we can say Android colon ID is equal to at the rate plus ID slash, and we can say button 1. And let's also give something to this edit text. So what you can actually do is Android colon ID is equal to at the rate plus ID slash edit text 1. So we have all the different IDs that we are setting for these different views. Now let's go back to the r.java file, and you will observe some unique thing. So you have now in the class ID button 1, checkbox 1, edit text 1, text view 1. All these are the different IDs that we have been creating in your activity main.xml. So here there is something that we need to be extremely careful. So you can use the same kind of the same ID name for different text views in different layouts. So this is one layout, activity main. In activity second also you can create a text view with the same ID. But what will typically happen is there is only one entry in r dot id dot, this particular class. So sometimes it will be a problem. So the suggestion is when you are actually creating IDs for different text views or buttons or edit text across different layouts, if we can actually try to keep unique names, that will be the best thing that we can actually do. So it's always suggested that we should have our own unique name IDs. So now that you have the IDs created, the layout available, and all of that stuff, we can actually go back to main activity.java and let's focus on the onCreate function. In the onCreate function, we have called set content view with r.layout.activity main. So the layout that is available in activity main is assigned to this particular activity. But now let's write a very simple program where when you click on the button, say btn1, we will get the text from edit text and assign it to the text view. Okay, this is, I think, no brainer for most of us. But how do we reference these views inside your program? This is most important. So we can actually say tv1 is equal to text view find view by id r dot id dot text view 1. So essentially what this line does is it finds a view whose ID is r.id.textview1. So if you see, the return type of find view by ID is an object of the type view, and what we are doing is we are typecasting it with text view. Same way, if you want to get edit text, all you need to do is you can call find view by ID r.id.edit text 1. Same is the case with your button. btn1 is equal to button with find view by id r dot id dot button one. As simple as that. Now that you have the edit text, now that you have the button one, all you need to do is create an interface uh, on button so that whenever button is clicked, you can actually change the text of the text view with whatever you entered in the edit text. To do that, what we can actually do is I can say btn1 dot set on click listener new view dot on click listener. So I have the on click function readily available. So in the on click function, what I will do is I will say tv1 dot set text with the character sequence. That will be my et1 dot get editable text dot toString. Simple and straightforward. So let me right click, run as Android application. So let me enter here, say Hitesh custom text, and let me click on click me. So you will see that the text view is actually changing, right? So this is, so let me actually change again and click on click me, the same. This is a very simple thing. But what we need to remember here is how do we reference the various views that we created in our layout inside my activity to be used, within my activity class. So we typically make use of this function find view by id and get the view whose id is mentioned here and typecast it appropriately to get the correct view. Simple and straightforward. So each views have, okay, let me go back to our Android view class. In the view class, I think we all know that the view class has various properties, and there are various methods that are supported by the view class. We have a lot of interfaces that you can define on top of a view class. So we have, go down, we have all the different nested classes for the view. So we have the interface called on click listener, on create context menu, on attack change listener, on drag listener. If you want to actually drag a view from one place to other, on hover listener, on key listener, all these different interfaces are anyways available. And every view class has a number of standard XML attributes. What's the alpha value? What's the background? Whether it is clickable or not? The scroll bars, the focusable, and all of this stuff. Now, when you go to an inner class, say for example the text view, the text view has its own properties, its own nested classes, and its own XML attributes. And apart from the XML attributes that TextView explicitly provides, it is also inheriting all the XML attributes from the base class android.view.view. And if you go further deep, say go to the subclass button, which is extending from the base class TextView. So button has its own properties, its own what we call XML attributes and all of that stuff. But it also has all the XML attributes that it inherits from TextView and all the XML attributes that it is inheriting from your view class, right? So if you want to look at all the different types of interfaces that are available for a given class, all the different types of XML parameters that are available for a specific class, and all the different methods that are available, the best option is to always go to the documentation and see where, you know, all the what are all the different methods or XML attributes are available, and we can start using them as we need. Okay. Any questions here? I think this is pretty straightforward and simple. Okay, cool. So the next most important thing is, say this is one activity of the application. How about I want to create another activity within the same application, and I want to consider this one activity to the other activity.
Hitesh, can we use style sheets kind of things for same as here as well?
Yes, we can use. It's not like style sheets. There are, styles and themes available. We will come back to styles and themes at a very later point of time. Okay.
Okay.
You have it's not the same CSS, but you can actually define some style sheets. You can actually define some styles and themes. Actually,
Okay.
okay, fine. So let's try to see how we can create a new activity and move from one activity to the other activity. So to create a new activity, it's as simple as creating a new class which extends from the base class activity. So I'm creating a class called second activity, and I'm actually extended from the base class activity. That's all. You have a new activity available. The next most important thing is you need to override and implement the most important function, that is your onCreate. So onCreate function, because onCreate function is the function that will get called whenever the activity is actually getting created. For this activity, we need to have a layout. So let's use this activity underscore second.xml. Let's go to activity second.xml. We have one text view. What I will do here is I will indicate this as this is the second activity. And let me also create a button and put this as, and say click to go back to first activity. Okay, so let me give a unique ID for each of these so that we just know. Android.id is equal to @ plus id by second activity tv1. I'm just using some dummy ID names and all of that stuff. uh, okay, so we have, I will change this relative layouts to linear layout and set the Android orientation to vertical. So now I have the layout that is readily available and the activity.java file readily available. So what I can actually do here is I can call set content view with r dot layout dot activity underscore second. Simple. But as we discussed in the last class, Android manifest.xml file is the most important file that we need to use to and we need to put the entire list of activities, services, broadcast receiver, everything, and anything inside this Android manifest.xml file. So let me copy this activity tag and make an entry for my second activity. So it's like com.sparity.sparityx dot second activity. But here there is a concept called intent filter that is actually coming into picture. The reason why intent filter is coming into picture is I'll explain you the concept of intents and the intent filters in just 2 minutes. But let us assume in the same project we have 10 different activities. When you launch the application, which activity should come first is always a question. The activity which should come first is identified by the category within the intent filter, and if it's a launcher category, then this is the activity that will be launched. But for now, let us try an experiment of having two activities with the same launcher category. So let me right click, run as Android application. So what we have here, we have two different activities with the same category, that is your android.intent.category.launcher. Let's see which activity is coming into foreground. What we observe here is the first activity is coming into foreground. But ideally, when you go back to the home screen, see the list of applications, you will see two Sparities. The first one, when you click on it, it will launch the first activity. The second one, when you click on it, it will directly, so this is I think launching the first activity. So let's click on this, and I think it will launch you the, so there's some problem. Yeah, it's actually launching the second activity. Okay, but this is not the behavior that anybody would expect. So because every application should have only one launcher activity, the other activities can all be categorized as default. Okay, here the concept of intent and intent filters play a very important role while starting an activity or moving from one activity to the other activity. An intent in case of Android is a abstract message which is actually used to start an activity. An intent is also a startup component which is used to start either an activity, or in future we will also understand that intent can be used to start the broadcast receiver, the service, and various other components. Okay, so intent is basically the component that is used to start the other activities. For example, forget about this application for a moment. You go back to home screen. Whenever you are clicking inside your application, let's say the messaging icon, the messaging application is getting created in a separate process, but the first activity, which is to show the list of all the messages, is getting started via an intent, and that intent is created by the framework. Suppose you click on compose message. Okay, so a new activity is coming to picture. This means the flow is something like this. The list of messages activity is creating an intent to start a new activity, and the new activity's main purpose is to compose the message. So everything is actually getting started by an intent. Even the first activity of the application, whenever the application is getting started, is launched by an intent, and that intent is actually created directly by the framework. Say if you put it like this, where we have only one activity with the launcher and the other activity as default, then we will by default have only one activity, and one icon in the application list. And when you click on the application, the first activity which has the category launcher will be launched. In this case, it's the main activity. But now let's see, how do we go from main activity to second activity on click of a button. So let's go to our main activity.java. Let's go to our layout. We have a lot of buttons. I think let's make use of your submit your choices button. So when you go to submit your choice button, or I will say I'll rename this to go to second activity. Let's actually create a unique ID for this button. I will say Android colon ID is equal to at the rate plus ID slash btn2. Let's just create one. Now you can go back to main activity.java. You can go to your onCreate function. Let's create another button variable. So I'll say btn2. Come back here, and what I can actually do is btn2 is equal to button of find view by id r.id dot btn2, and let me create a on click listener for this button dot set on click listener is new view dot on click listener, and we have the on click function. So as discussed, what we need to do is we need to create an object of the type intent. Int intent is equal to new intent of, there are various constructors that are available. So let me check intent, and this will be get application context, and the class is second activity dot class, and you can actually call start activity with intent. So all you're actually doing is you're creating an object of the type intent, and you're calling start activity with intent. So this should actually take us to the second activity. Let's see how this works. Okay, I don't know for what reason there's a crash. Let's look at the logcat to see where the crash is there. So it's not able to launch because it's not able to see the activity. Activity. Uh, this is the problem. I think we did not initialize btn2, we initialized btn1 again. So I think let's change this. Sorry about that. Right click, max, and okay. So now we have the first activity. So on click of this button, I'm actually creating an intent and I'm actually going to the second activity. So if you want to go back to first activity, one option is you can click on back and you will go to the first activity, or let's write a simple program to actually go back to the first activity from your second activity. So let me put this button btn1 and refer this btn1 here. Btn1 is equal to button of find view id r dot id dot second activity button 1, and I'll say btn1 dot set on click listener new view dot on click listener. And what we can do is we can create intent in is equal to new intent of get application context comma main activity dot class, and I'll say start activity of in. Simple. So I can do right click run as Android application. Okay. Now let's try to understand something here. This is the first activity. So the on create, on start, on resume of the first activity was called. Now when you click on the second activity, the first activity is on pause is getting called, on stop is getting called, and then you are actually going to the second activity. Now what happened to the first activity? The first activity went to the background, and then you have second activity on top of the first activity. So let's imagine a stack where we have first activity on the bottom of the stack and the second activity on top of the stack. Now when I click to go back to first activity, if you observe here, the first activity is on create, on start and on resume is getting called. That means the first activity is getting created again. Now you have three activities in your stack: the first activity, the second activity, and another instance of the first activity. Now, when you click on go to second activity, the second instance is actually creating one more. So now you have four activities on the stack: first activity, second activity, again first activity, and then again the second activity. Ideally, when you click on this function called, click on this button called click to go back to first activity, second activity should be killed and first activity should be brought into foreground. But what we are doing here is we wrote a code which is typically faulty, where we wrote an intent and we are creating another instance of the first activity. So if you click back now, it goes to first activity. If you click back now, it goes to the second activity, and then the first activity. It's actually looping again and again. So ideally, the code that should actually go here in the second activity, whenever you want to go back to the previous activity, is not to use an intent, but simply call finish. So when you call finish, the activity that is currently in the foreground is getting killed. Then automatically the activity that is in the background is getting launched or getting started. Who just joined? Okay, that's fine. So this is the looping back. So here there are different types of intents that we can actually use to go from one activity to the other activity. This intent that I actually used is an explicit intent, where I am explicitly mentioning the name of the activity. On the other hand, you may not want to actually use the name of the activity, but you can directly make use of the action uh, for an activity. So, for example, let me go to the intent class, and within the intent class, you will see a lot of these uh, actions that are by default there for the activities that are already in the application, that are already in the phone. So let's take an example of action.call or something like that and see how that works. So let me go back to my Eclipse, and for button one, instead of tv1.setText, let us actually create a intent in is equal to new intent, and there is an action called intent dot action underscore set call button, or let's say action underscore call, and then I will say start activity. Okay. So here I'm actually creating an intent whose action is intent dot action underscore call, and I'm starting this activity. So what happens here is whenever such an intent is called, it will look across all the applications that are installed on the phone for an activity whose action is android.intent.action.call, and it will then launch that particular activity. So what we are trying to do here is we are trying to launch. So it stopped. Maybe there is some problem in the way I wrote. Sorry. Activity, no activity found to handle intent. The call intent. Let me see. Okay. I think the call application itself is not installed on this emulator, but you can actually go ahead and start an activity, and the activity need not be an activity inside our application. You can even launch an activity that is outside of our application. Okay. So on alternatively, you can also go to android.manifest.xml file, and you can also add a new action here and say action android colon name is equal to Hitesh action. You can put whatever name you want to actually put. There's absolutely no problem with that. So you can copy this string, go back to main activity, and you can actually put the string here. So now this is an implicit intent. So whenever there is a start activity with such kind of an intent, then the framework will search in the manifest.xml file across all the different applications what is the activity which is accepting this action. Then it will find out that there is this activity called second activity who is allowing an intent with action Hitesh action. So now the intent resolution has actually happened, and the result of the intent resolution is to start the activity second activity. Okay. So the purpose of intent filter is basically to inform the framework what kind of intents will this activity be ready to accept or process. Okay. So this is a simple thing. See, I think my battery is draining. I don't have a charger in home. I forgot it in office. So any questions here? So what we basically saw today was, at a high level, the UI hierarchy, or in case of Android, how do we create different views? How do we create different view groups? So we just saw, say, linear layout and couple of views there. And the other most important concept that we learned is on intent, and how do we move from one activity to the other activity using an intent. A- And what are the two different types of intents? Basically, explicit intent and the implicit intent. Yeah, Tulsi garu, any questions?
No, I'm good. Okay, fine.
Yeah. So sorry, I
Hi, Hitesh Srini.
yeah.
Uh, the action,
Mm-hmm.
do we need to specify anywhere that which apps are going to support this action? No, right? So
No.
it is up to Android framework to figure out which
Yes.
apps can support that action and start those activities.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay.
So you can actually start an activity that is from some other app also, provided you know the action that is supported by the activity.
Okay.
Okay, so for example, you wrote an application, you installed it on the phone, it has got one activity, and the name of the activity is something we don't know, and you gave an action by the name, say, com.srini dot my custom action, and you gave
Mm-hmm.
me that I have an action called com.srini dot my custom action. So I can create an intent whose action is com.srini dot my custom action, and I can start an activity. It will immediately launch the activity uh, from your application.
Okay.
Like if you go back to intents, right, intent class, there are different actions that are by default available. So these are the different intents that are these are the different actions that are actually available from Android applications. Okay, so
Okay.
android.dial, android.call, and all of that stuff.
Okay.
Okay, so we can actually, so now let me give you one option. So I am trying to write an application, and that application also supports phone calling. I think if you are using Android, right, if you try to call a phone number, say you have Vonage installed on your phone, you have Viber installed on your phone, you have Skype installed on your phone, and of course the default phone calling app is anyways there. So from contacts, whenever you try to click on a contact and press call, sometimes it will give you a pop-up with all the four different applications that are available, and you will select one of those applications to make a call. I think
Mm-hmm.
you might have all observed that. The reason is
Yes. Yes.
my Vonage phone's calling activity in the intent filter is mentioning CALL, this action. So what happens here is when I use this from contacts application, when somebody tries to call, there is a conflict. The conflict is by default calling application is having this action android.intent.action.call. My application is also having the same action. So the framework will ask the user, okay, I have two different applications that support the same action. Select which one to use. So I'll select, whatever function, whatever application I want to, and then click on start. So the contacts application is essentially launching, my second activity to perform calling operation. Whether how my second activity handles is a completely different issue altogether. Am I clear with that?
Yes. Yes.
Any more questions? Okay. So then what we will try to do in the next class is we saw how to go from one activity to the other activity. We will see using the same intent concept, how do we send data from one activity to the other activity. That's the next topic that we need to cover. and then we'll try to see more layout and UI examples, say with relative layout, with table layout, and all of that stuff, and then we can take it forward from there.
So the next class is on Tuesday, right?
I think we can even have it on Saturday night or Sunday night.
I think Tuesday will give us some time to go through whatever you covered in the last two classes, and I think we can participate more in the class.
Sure,
If it
definitely.
is Saturday, I can do Saturday night, but I don't think I will have enough time to go through what you covered so far.
Sure. Then let us do one thing. Let us move it to Tuesday, and I'll send out a mail that we'll be doing it on Tuesday, and whatever we did today is also recorded. So I'll again upload and share you the link.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll also send you the zip file of the source code. So in case you want to actually refer, there's nothing much there, but just in case you want to refer.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yes. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Hitesh.
Thanks. Yeah. Have a good night.